Okay, welcome to our webinar today on identity theft. And we're so excited that you decided to join us today because your identity is a valuable piece of information. And identity theft and identity fraud are fast-growing crimes. Some people may think that identity theft is what happens when someone steals your credit card or even your debit card. But actually, identity theft is much broader. It can involve someone actually impersonating you, using your personal information to even open bank accounts or withdrawing money from your accounts, possibly even taking out loans in your name. So by the end of today's workshop, there's several things that we envision that you will have learned. You should be able to learn how to identify the signs of identity theft and fraud. You'll be able to examine different types of identity theft and fraud. Additionally, you'll be able to identify strategies to protect yourself from identity theft and fraud. And then you'll learn how to protect your data using safe habits. On our next slide, I just want to share a few facts with you all. So there is a victim of identity theft every 2 seconds. Additionally, you are more than likely to have your identity stolen more than you are likely to have your car stolen or even your home burglarized. Both of these facts are true. Identity theft is more common than most of us even think. And we will learn more about identity theft in this workshop, along with some ways that you can protect yourself, from this growing issue. So moving along, I want to discuss a little bit about identity theft and identity fraud. And to better understand how to put ourselves at risk, how we typically put ourselves at risk, let's examine the differences between the two types of crimes, because many folks don't know there's two different types. Identity theft and identity fraud are terms used to refer to all types of crime in which someone wrongfully obtains or uses another person's personal data in some way. And identity fraud occurs when someone's personal information is used to access money, while identity theft is when personal information is accessed, even if it isn't used for financial gain. Identity fraud and identity theft can happen to just about anyone, but some people may be more at risk than others. And according to the U.S. Department of Justice, men and women are both equal targets of identity theft. Adults over age 60 are at an increased risk for identity theft as well. And finally, households with an annual income of $75,000 or higher are at a greater risk. So on our next slide, we're going to discuss a little bit about the effects of identity theft. When someone steals your identity to impersonate you, open up new accounts, take out loans, and rack up debt, obviously you're going to suffer some long-lasting consequences. And as you turn your attention to the slide, you can see some of the statements that were collected during a survey by ID Theft Center, which asked victims of identity thieves about the consequences of the theft on their daily lives. And some of these things were, they weren't able to apply for loans. They had to request government assistance. It ultimately shook them up, and shook their family. Identity theft can cost you time, money, and reputation. So once your identity is stolen, depending on how many accounts and services you have, you'll need to contact each bank, change each password, and notify all your credit card companies. And this process may take one day, or it could even last for years, depending on how complex the identity theft was. And once an identity thief has your personal information, there's many things that they can do with it. And so as we transition to the next slide, we're going to discuss a little bit about that. Identity thieves will often use stolen personal information in several ways. They will use your information to open accounts with credit card companies, financial institutions, or even services can be opened like cable services, cell phone, telephone, utilities, or they may even apply for public benefits. Identity thieves may also use stolen information to make transactions on your existing accounts. The thief may use the card or account itself to make purchases and even rack up debt in your name. In cases of identity theft, thieves may commit fraud by using your personal information to engage in criminal activity. They may, for example, present your identity as their own to the police if they're caught doing something illegal, or they may use it to commit even cyber crimes. If your medical identity is stolen, thieves may use it to get prescriptions, visit medical professionals, or receive an expensive treatment. This type of theft has a financial cost, but can also affect your medical history. And now that you know what identity thieves can do to steal your identity, let's look at what they may be after in order to accomplish this. So on our next slide, we're going to discuss something really important. It is PII, which is your personally identifiable information. When identity thieves look to steal your identity, the first thing they need is to find your personally identifiable information, also known as PII. Personally identifying information is anything that is used to distinguish or identify you. Identifying information can fall into four main areas. It can be biographical, medical, biometric, and even financial. So as we transition to the next slide, what can be used to steal your identity is the proposed question. Well, there are many different kinds of personal information that thieves can use to steal your identity. And that could be your social security number, your driver's license, passport, passwords even, credit report, marriage or divorce records, tax documents, bank account information, and email accounts could all be misused. So how do identity thieves get a hold of your PII? Well, we can look at some typical methods next on exactly how they do. So on the next slide, methods used by identity thieves, I'd like you to turn your attention so you could see some of these methods. And you may think identity theft happens mostly online, but there are some non-technological methods thieves use to steal your identity. The most common non-technological method thieves use to access your data is dumpster diving, shoulder surfing, and even skimming. Many times, thieves use personal theft to steal your identity. They may steal your purse or wallet from you, or and then they may even get the information in your wallet and just basically take over your identity. Hopefully, you will not be a victim of theft, but in the case that you are, it's important to keep in mind some precautions in case your personal identity or personal property is stolen. Some of the things that we would like to recommend is not carrying around PIN numbers or passwords for those accounts that you might have in your wallet. Don't carry your Social Security card in your wallet as well. And finally, only carry checks when you need them. You would think that most identity theft comes from personal theft, but identity theft can also occur from dumpster diving. And that's when someone literally goes through your trash or recycling looking for discarded bills. Even pre-approved credit card offers, documents that contain your personally identifiable information. Even so, to discourage the dumpster diving, make sure you completely shred your sensitive documents before you even toss them. Using a cross-cut shredder is typically best because it makes it more difficult for these thieves to piece your documents back together. Another thing that can happen is shoulder surfing, when thieves literally peek over your shoulder and record your sensitive information, your credit cards, passwords, pins. So always be aware of your surroundings and cover your phone screens or when you're entering numbers into the ATM. And identity theft via mail occurs when thieves steal personal mail out of your mailbox. Another way these thieves steal your mail is by rerouting it. So if they know your address, they can simply log on to USPS website and fill out an online form. Once the mail is redirected to an address of the thief, they can sort through your mail looking for valuable information. Identity thieves can also steal your information by using more low-tech scenarios, like going through your mail and opening your bills, even discarded bills. They can access your address, your name, even some tax or medical information. So you either want to keep or properly destroy this type of mail. Identity thieves can also use a method known as skimming to collect your information. And this occurs when a thief installs an illegal device that is known as a skimmer into a gas pump, an ATM, or a credit card machine so it can capture your data. When you swipe your card into the skimmer, the device collects your information. So to avoid having your card skimmed, look at the device you are about to use to ensure that there is not a skimmer on it. And examples can be found online if you're not exactly sure what a skimmer is. And also make sure to cover your PIN pad when inputting security codes in the ATMs. And maintain possession of your card and keep it in your sight at all times. This actually happened to my family when we got gas at a small gas station in Dallas. We entered our debit card into the machine and our card was skimmed. Fortunately, we do have neighborhood credit union, and they immediately shut that card down because they knew that this person was trying to make multiple transactions in other places, and they caught it right away. That's one of the great things about having a credit union on your side. And then additionally, we learned shortly after that we should use our neighborhood credit union credit cards when we are at the gas pump as opposed to our debit cards, because that makes life a lot easier. And if you have any questions about those products, you can email us, and we'd be more than happy to share that information with you after the class. So next, we will learn about some common scams that identity thieves use. And identity thieves can use many methods and techniques to steal your identity, but in general, common scams include phishing, telephone scams, and elder fraud scams. Okay, so some of you may have received a phishing email, for example, an email that appears to be from your bank, but it isn't. Phishing is when a scammer does use a fraudulent email or text or copycat websites to get you to share some of your valuable information. So this scammer may include requests from people pretending to be a friend, a family member who needs some financial help. And phishing scams include emails where thieves will often send out fake emails impersonating a company that you do business with, such as a bank or credit card company. Or they will reach out through email and pretend that they're protecting you from a virus or malware allegedly detected on your computer. And then there's telephone scams. They occur in a variety of ways, whether it's a telemarketer calling you with a special limited time offer, to people impersonating government officials, banks, or credit card companies. And then, of course, there's elder fraud scams are also well known and common. And these scams can range from Medicare health insurance scams, funeral and cemetery scams, or even power of attorney scams, and much, much more. So on our next slide, it's an example of a phishing email. And probably most of us have been a victim of a phishing email. And now that we know how thieves gain access to data, we're going to look at the inner workings of some common scams. And remember, these are just some of the more common scams that are out here. So let's begin talking about phishing, which we briefly talked about earlier. It's a scam where a thief pretends to be a legitimate company and tries to collect your personal information. Whenever you receive an email or a text message asking you to click on a link to reset your password, update your credit card information, or enter your social security number, or other personal information, there are a few steps you can take to ensure the email is authentic. In the case of the emails, check the email address it was actually sent from. Does it match the email address used by the company or the bank it is supposedly from? Look for subtle differences in spelling, email address providers, or even individual names. For example, if it's from a financial institution, make sure that the email address says something like, John Doe at acmebank.com and not John Doe at a misspelled bank.com. Or even John Doe from Gmail or Yahoo.com. All of these things should be red flags for you, and if there are misspellings and things like that, so you know that there could potentially be a phishing. This actually happened to me last weekend. I'd love to share this example with you all. I received an email from Home Depot saying that I had applied for a credit card, and I mentioned it to my husband, and he's like, I don't think we did that. And the phone number that was provided in this email, it wanted me to open an attachment, which we'll get to later. The email that was provided and the phone number didn't seem legitimate to me. So I decided to call the phone number, and it was just a recorded number. It wouldn't allow me to speak with any representatives. And so I called Home Depot to get clarity, and they provided me a completely different number, and they said they had no idea about it. So, look for those red flags, because those red flags, if you have that inkling, if you have any doubts, just go ahead and do your research to find out. Because had I opened that attachment in the email, I could have quite possibly fell for a phishing scam. So also check the language used in the greeting. How is the message addressed to you? Is it from a trusted institution? And if so, it'll probably have your name on it, not like dear member or valued client. Check the language in the rest of the message. Is it too general? Is it threatening? Is it formal? Are there grammatical mistakes? All of these things are really important. And is the person asking for something unusual, like your social security number, or they want you to wire money? Does it seem really urgent or time sensitive? So check for all of these. And also, before you click to open any attachment or any links, ask yourself, are you expecting any attachment? Because it could be malware, just like the example I told you about from last Saturday when I got that email. It really took me by surprise. On the next slide is an actual example of a phishing email. So I'd like to turn your attention to that. And if you'll notice in the it says it's from Yahoo Mail, and it has the subject changing your password. But if you notice midway through the email, Yahoo is misspelled. There is an additional O in the web address, so that automatically should be a red flag for you that something is not right here. So on the next slide, we're going to talk a little bit about phone scams. And many scammers also operate via telephone. And you may have received some of these calls. I know I have gotten a lot more lately post-COVID, that is for sure. And in these scenarios, scammers will actually call up a victim and try to collect personal information, usually even financial information, by using a pretext, such as telling you that they need you to claim a prize or something like that. And watch out for those telltale signs that the caller is trying to gain information about your identity. So you're going to want to listen for content. You know, is it a sweepstakes? Is it too good to be true? Those sorts of things. Listen for urgency. Are they pressuring you to ship, pay for shipping and handling? That's also signs of a scam. And then listen to what they ask for. Are they asking for social security numbers? Do they want you to wire money, transfer money? All of these will, put that light bulb on to say, something doesn't seem right here. And as we continue on with our next slide, phone scams activity, you can see here that this can happen to pretty much anyone. Somebody coming up with a story. Most phone scammers are strangers who don't even know the victim. However, some phone scammers will look up information about the victim's family or pretend to be a third party to appear more credible in their scams. But some scam artists may even be an acquaintance, a friend, or even family. Especially when people have access to your Facebook and things like that, they can impersonate friends or family. We've actually heard of things happening to folks, members here at the credit union. And on the next slide, I do want to preface the elder fraud scam is one of those scams that we've heard about, trusted friends and family taking advantage of their loved ones. We've seen these phone scams too. They're often used on senior citizens. Now we'll see another way scammers target senior citizens. People should be aware that their elderly friends and relatives may become victims of this next scam. So many seniors may own assets, house, car, retirement funds, 401k. They may have benefits that seem very attractive as targets for identity thieves. And an identity thief may be a stranger who tries to befriend a senior, a professional who may have access to the senior's home, or even a friend or family member. So one of the most common ways in which thieves target seniors is abuse of power of attorney. And if you are a senior or a caretaker of a senior, be aware of anyone asking for your power of attorney. So seniors often may need increasing help with their everyday finances, including household and medical finances. They may grant a family member or close friend a power of attorney. An individual who is granted power of attorney is legally bound to act in the senior's best interest. But sometimes that individual, unfortunately, does not. And in the next slide is a little bit about an elder fraud scam, whereas Miss Garcia, her niece is the power of attorney. The aunt, Miss Garcia, is finding things are missing around the house. She complains when her niece is not around. Angela is planning to remodel things in the house. So I just want to point out those suspicious details. First of all, Miss Garcia's change in behavior and attitude, and then Angela wanting to purchase an expensive car, complaints about missing valuables, and then of course Angela planning to spend her aunt's money on expensive home remodels. All of those things, should raise red flags with elder scams. So knowing how to spot a scam is an important skill, and you will find out more details about scams and red flags at www.identitytheft.gov. And I want to discuss a few special kinds of identity theft. So as we transition to the next slide, we will do so. There's firstly the child identity theft. A lot of people don't know that this is growing target population among identity thieves using children's personal information. Next is medical identity theft, where they use your identity, of course, to get prescriptions, healthcare, insurance claims, benefits, so on and so forth. And then finally, there's the tax identity theft. And that's been going on a long time, as we all know, but accessing your social security number, name, and try to file a tax return using your identity. And if you receive a notice from the IRS or your tax preparer about multiple tax return filings, or there is some suspicious details in your IRS records around employment or earnings history, a thief may be committing tax fraud, and you should definitely contact the IRS in regards to that. So on our next slide, we want to propose the question, would you recognize signs of identity theft? So what are some red flags that can alert you to identity theft? Well, denials, first and foremost, a credit card denial or application or of a service, even utility, rent, mortgage, unusual activity such as unusual charges on your credit card or credit reports and things like that, IRS reports indicating that more than one person has filed a tax return using your social security number, medical, if there's incorrect medical history or medical bills that do not seem right to you, and then of course lost items such as lost mail and lost bills. So on the next slide, as we discuss how can you protect yourself and your loved ones, well, I just want to go briefly over some do's and don'ts. You can protect your personal information for free by following some basic safety rules. And here are some do's and don'ts for protecting against identity theft. So our do's. You want to monitor your credit report and scores. And you can access your credit report for free at www.annualcreditreport.com. Okay, and you're entitled to one free credit report from each of the 3 credit bureaus each year. So take advantage of that just to check and double check. Another do, monitor your financial statements. And many of us are guilty of probably not doing this, but reviewing financial transactions carefully can really make a difference. If you see some errors, contact your bank immediately. Another do is practicing online safety. When you log into your email or online banking accounts, and you can change your passwords every 3 months. That way you know that you have strong passwords and they're difficult for folks to guess. And also do be aware of your surroundings. When you're at the ATM, watch out in public places for shoulder surfers. People may be watching you, your phone's passcode, your credit card information even. And some of the don'ts that I want to discuss are, don't use public Wi-Fi if you can, especially when you are accessing sensitive information. Don't click on unknown links because this could potentially cause malware and things like that to your devices. And then don't open suspicious attachments. They could also put viruses and things on your computer, or they could steal your information. Now, as we move along to our next slide, we're going to discuss ways to protect yourself against an identity theft. And here are some of the services you can use. If you feel you need to do more or could use help with protection, commercial monitoring services are actually available to you. There are credit monitoring services, which will keep a close eye on your credit and let you know when your credit report changes. And then there's identity monitoring services, which will fill in the gaps that credit monitoring services may miss. You can also use a credit freeze or security freeze to protect your accounts. And a credit freeze typically prevents anyone from accessing your credit, such as to open a new account. You will have to authorize that release. And credit freezes and unfreezes are free from 3 of the major credit reporting bureaus when you request them. Another way to protect yourself is through fraud alerts. Fraud alerts are available from any of the 3 credit reporting bureaus, and temporary fraud alerts are free and last up to 1 year. So definitely utilize those free services because they're there as an additional method to protect you. We at the credit union do as much as we can to protect your most valuable assets, and that information just helps you take it one step further. So let's discuss in the next slide how the law protects you. Well, identity theft is a crime, and under federal law, you are entitled to certain protections. So the Identity Theft and Assumption Deterrence Act of 1998 does state that identity theft is a federal crime, and it can carry a punishment of up to 15 years imprisonment. And the Graham-Leach-Billy Act requires financial institutions to protect customers' non-public information and give them notice about how they use and store their data. With some exceptions, you can generally ask to opt out of your information being shared even. So every consumer who has been affected by identity theft has a set of rights and include the right to file identity theft report with the FTC. You can place a 1-year fraud alert, place a free credit freeze, get free copies of your credit report, and have incorrect information removed off of that report as well. So what are the steps to take after identity theft? We've covered a lot of things that could potentially affect your credit. And the good news is a few good habits and strategies around managing your credit and debt can go a long way towards helping keep your credit score high. So the 3 steps that I want to discuss is first, collect information. So review your credit report and monitor it, of course. And the next step is to report to the fraud departments and federal agencies. Report any thefts or fraud documents, fraud to the fraud department at the organization or company where it occurred. You want to close all the accounts and change any passwords and PINs, and report the theft to your credit bureaus as well. And the third step is you have to repair the damage. So you're going to want to review the new accounts that were created by the thief, close all of them down, review, the correct statements and chain charges that might be on those bills, on the credit court reports, and financial documents as well. And then make a plan of action for monitoring your account to get a paid monitoring service. Now, the Federal Trade Commission website, again, www.identitytheft.gov, offers free personalized recovery plans on your unique experiences. So utilize that service that's available to you. So in summary, today we learned the following. Identity theft can take various forms, and it can target many types of people. However, by being aware and mindful, and by sharing your information selectively, you can reduce the window of opportunity for thieves to access your information. As more and more personal information does become available online, and as financial services move more towards digital and online, it's important to develop the skills to understand and monitor your own finances. And it's also important to build healthy habits, such as changing passwords regularly, requesting and reviewing credit reports each year, and ensuring that any errors are corrected immediately. The more difficult it is for identity thieves to access or use your data, the more protected you and others, in your family will be. So I want to thank you all for joining us today. I am going to stop our recording here.